Good morning, my dear students. I wish and I hope that no one among you is infected by this coronavirus, and I hope that you're going to be safe. Anyway, this is going to be another way of dealing with each other. I mean, this is a lecture given to you, from very, very far, and I hope that you are going to benefit by this new experience. Anyway, I think I'm going to talk to you about phonetics once again in a very brief way, because we had a lecture concerning this PPT presentation, and it's going to be just the first one. Afterwards, I will be dealing with a whole series of lectures, introducing the different chapters that we are going to cover during the whole semester. The first lecture, consists, it deals with phonetics, of course. How do we make sounds? And when we talk about sounds, we include in it two major, categories of sounds. We include both consonants and vowels. Of course, we have got different reasons why we are going to deal with sounds, because of some features of language. And this feature of language which allows us the possibility to talk about sounds is discreteness. You remember that we talked about sentences that consist of set of words. For example, the man will rewrite the letter. It's possible to divide this sentence into words: the plus man plus will plus rewrite plus the plus letter. Okay? And of course, words can be divided into smaller units that we call morphemes. For example, re consists of the consonant R and the vowel A. Right consists of the consonant R followed by the diphthong I followed by the consonant T. What we notice here is that the words can also, the morphemes can also be divided further into separate sounds. So which means that the sounds are the smallest units out of which we compose morphemes, and morphemes are higher units out of which we compose words, and words, of course, can be taken together to form sentences. This is what is being explained clearly by this figure here. So we have got some kind of hierarchical organization between the different units. At the top we have got a sentence composed of word 1, word 2, word 3, word 4, etc., and every word is composed of different morphemes. Notice also that the morpheme itself can be composed of different sounds. Now the problem is that how do we make consonants? We make consonants by narrowing the vocal tract at a particular point. This particular point here means the point of contact between two articulators. And what is meant by articulators? Those speech organs that enable us to produce speech sounds. That point of contact between them is called a place of articulation. Now, what's the mechanism we use to produce sounds? Of course, here we begin by different speech organs that are necessary in the production of different speech sounds. We begin first of all by the lungs. You see them here, and we have got the windpipe. The arrow is pointing out, to the windpipe, and of course we have got the food channel. This is the food channel. Now this is another figure showing to us the two different passages, the passage for food and the passage for air. And what blocks, the food to enter the passage for air is the epiglottis. You have got everything there. Okay. This is another way of showing this, what we call airstream movement from the lungs upward, through the windpipe, through the mouth, or through the nose. Okay, so here we modify the vocal tract at particular points, to produce speech sounds. Now, question 1, we make consonants by constricting our stomachs. We make consonants with our mouths all alone. We make consonants by certain rays that come from our brains. We make consonants by constricting the vocal tract at particular points. Of course, the right, answer in this case is the last one. We make consonants by constricting the vocal tract at particular points. Okay, this is another figure showing to us the whole mechanism, okay, which is involved in the production of speech sounds. Of course, we begin now by talking about the different speech organs, within our mouth. We begin first of all by the lips here. Okay, the lips play a role in the production of speech. Okay, you have got the arrow there. We can also talk about the palate. The palate is another area or region just behind the alveolar ridge. Okay, it's very hard. We can feel it by means of our tongue there. And also, just behind the hard palate, we can talk about the velum or the soft palate. It's the softest part in the roof of the mouth. Okay, the velum, and attached to the velum, there is a hanging flesh at the back of our mouth that we call the uvula. This is the uvula here. Okay. Now the tongue. The tongue, of course, from a biological point of view, is just one unit, but for the sake of the production and description of speech sounds, it should be, divided into different parts. Okay, and of course we can talk about different parts. The first one is the tip of the tongue, followed by the blade, followed by the front, followed by the back, and then the very back of it, that we call the root of the tongue. These are parts that I dictated to my students, and they took note of them. Okay. Now we can talk about two different passages for the air. The nasal cavity. Look at this arrow here showing us this passage through the nose, the nasal cavity. Okay, so we have got two different cavities here. We have got also the oral cavity. So it's through the mouth, the oral cavity, or the passage of air through the mouth here. Okay. Now, another question, how are consonants made? Consonants are made by narrowing the vocal tract at particular points. Okay, how do we classify consonants? When we talk about this classification of consonants, we are simply trying to describe how sounds in general are being articulated. So we're going to talk about three different criteria by means of which we can classify and by means of which we can describe, consonants. First of all, we can talk about, place of articulation. This is what I have just explained. It means what's the point at which the vocal tract is narrowed. And number two, the criterion number two by means of which we have to describe sounds is manner of articulation. How is the vocal tract narrowed? And of course, number three, voicing. Here we are talking about the vocal cords, whether they are open or closed. According to these three criteria, we can obtain different categories of sounds here. Okay? Now here there is a certain figure showing to us our vocal cords and how they work and how they give shape to different speech sounds that we produce. Look, the vocal cords, open and close. Okay, this is another way, a clear picture of our vocal cords while, working there, okay? So how do we classify consonants? Place of articulation, remember place P, number 2 manner, and 3 voicing. So just remember P and V. This is a very short way to remember these 3 criteria, P and V, place, M manner, V voice. So we can talk now about different classes of sounds according to how they are being produced or articulated, taking into account the 3 criteria just mentioned, place, manner, and voice. So first of all, let's begin by different places of articulation. We can talk about the first one, bilabial consonants. They are formed by the narrowing of the vocal tract by the lips. For example, P in pat, B in bat, M in mat, they are bilabial because the 3 consonants are being made or produced or articulated by if you like, let's say closing our 2 lips, the lower lip and the upper lip. Okay, this is what is meant by bilabial. The 2 lips are involved in the production of the bilabial sound, bilabial. Now, we have got labiodental sounds or labiodental consonants. They are formed by the narrowing of the vocal tract by a combination of lips and teeth. Okay, and teeth, not the lips. Just omit this, the last word here. So we have got the lower lip and the upper teeth. This is the case, which is shown through the production of f in fail, v in veil. Okay, this is it here. Okay. Now, another place of articulation, alveolar consonants are formed by the narrowing of the vocal tract at the alveolar ridge. T in tap, s in sap, n in nap. So it's the blade of the tongue which is raised towards the alveolar ridge. Just remember the different parts I introduced to you in our lecture in order to remember the different parts of the tongue here. So we have got, once again, I'm going just to mention them very briefly. So we have got the tip of the tongue. Just behind it we have got the blade. Just behind the blade we have got the front. And just behind the front we have got the back and the root of it. Now, t, s, and n in tap, sap, and nap, these are called alveolar consonants because we raise the blade of the tongue towards our alveolar ridge. That's why these sounds t, s, n are called alveolar sound or alveolar consonants. Okay, this is what happens in here. Now, another category of sounds that we call interdental consonants, such as th and th. These 2 sounds are produced by putting our tip of the tongue between our teeth, both the lower and the upper teeth here. Okay. Alveolo-palatal consonants, or in some books, they are called palato-alveolar consonants. These are formed by narrowing of the vocal tract between the alveolar ridge and the hard palate here. But we raise the blade and part of the front of the tongue there. Okay, so these are the cases of sounds in ship, sh in ship, and ch in chip, and j in jip. Now we can talk about velar consonants. These are formed by the narrowing of the vocal tract at the velum. By the way, the velum, you know that it's called a soft palate. So words, that contain these sounds like cap and k, there is a velar consonant. Gap and the g in gap is a velar consonant, and sin is a velar nasal. K, g, n are velar sounds because we raise the back of tongue towards the soft palate or the velum. Okay. And we talk about uvular consonants. Uvular consonants, do not exist in English, but they do exist in other languages, like Arabic. So, q in qird, q, this is formed by the narrowing of the vocal tract at the uvula. And so, words which are produced at that particular point are called uvular consonants. Okay, uvular consonants. Now, question number 2. Classify the following sounds on the basis of their place of articulation. So we have got b, p, and m. Are they bilabial, alveolar, alveopalatal, velar, or uvular? We notice that all of them are being produced by involving the two lips. So they are bilabial. Okay. K, g. Are they bilabial, alveolar, alveopalatal, velar, or uvular? We have got sh and j. Are they bilabial, alveolar, alveopalatal, velar, or uvular? Same thing for q. Is it bilabial, alveolar, alveopalatal, velar, or uvular? Just remember what we have said concerning the description of different sounds, and we will automatically find the right answer. Okay, now we can talk about the other criterion that we introduced, number 2, which is manner of articulation. Now let's talk about different manners. The first one is what we call a stop sound, or stops in the plural. Stops are formed by a complete obstruction of air. The air is being stopped, obstructed completely by the speech organs. This is the case of p and t in pat, k and p in cap, d and g in dog, b and d in blood. In all the underlined consonants, we need to stop the air momentarily. Okay. Another manner of articulation is affricate. What is an affricate sound? Is a stop followed by a fricative sound. And they have got more or less the same place of articulation. Okay, so we have got chip and gym. Ch in chip, j in gym. Okay, nasals. Nasals are made by lowering the velum and complete closure of the vocal tract. Man, m and n in man, and n in sing, sing. So these are nasals. This is another manner of articulation. Now let's talk about lowering and raising the velum together with the uvula, of course, that follows it. Okay. So here, it can be raised or lowered. When it is raised, the only passage which is left free for the air is the mouth, the oral cavity. But when it is lowered, the air can escape through both cavities, the oral cavity and the nasal cavity. Okay? Liquids. Liquids are formed by an obstruction that does not completely close the vocal tract or create friction. This is the case of r in reed and l in lead. Okay? Glides. Glides are formed by a very slight closure of the vocal tract. For example, y and w in the word yellow, and whisper, wash. So y and w are called glides because they are formed by a very slight closure of the vocal tract. Now let's talk about voicing. This is the third criterion by means of which we can describe sounds. Remember that we talked about place, manner. Now voicing. Voicing, this is the job of the vocal cords. So, voiced sounds are characterized by the closure of the vocal tract. It's not, closure, but there is a rapid movement of closing and opening by the vocal cords. This is what gives us a vibration. Okay? It's not the closure that you have got here, by a rapid closing and opening of the vocal cords. And this is what gives us, number one, voiced, sound. So just correct this. Voiced sounds are characterized by a rapid closing and opening of the vocal tract. Of course, this is done by involving our vocal cords. Now, voiceless sounds are made without closing the vocal tract. The passage between the vocal cords is left open, so the air is left free through them. And in this way, we obtain voiceless consonants. So, voiced consonants are obtained when we have got vibration. Vibration obtains when we have got this rapid closing and opening by the vocal cords. Now, voiceless sounds are being obtained when the two vocal cords do not work. They are at rest. There is a wide opening left between them. Okay? And this is what happens there. Okay? Look. Okay, when we have got this rapid closing and opening, this is what gives us vibration. But when we have got just opening, a wide opening left between the two vocal cords, here we obtain voiceless sounds. So here we have got a case of our vocal cords, vibrating here, okay? That's all as far as this first lecture is concerned. I would like to move on to the next lecture. Okay, I hope that you have, tried, to get the main points of it, and to remember what we talked about, before.